Rena came home humming. Actually humming. Like the world was weightless and she had just floated through it without a scratch. She tossed her keys into the bowl by the door, kicked off her boots, and smiled like someone who'd just closed a deal or flirted her way into a free dessert. Then she glanced over and saw me. Her face changed. Not drastically. Just enough for the corners of her mouth to drop the act. She forgot, just for a split second, that she was supposed to pretend she was happy to see me. And in that fraction of a second, I knew. I knew before she said a word. Before she threw her gym bag on the table and announced she was starving, like we were still doing this, like we were still normal. I didn't ask where she was. I already knew. It wasn't the gym. The leggings were too clean. The hair too styled. The perfume too fresh. She sat across from me at the table like everything was fine. Popped open her can of sparkling water. Took a sip. Scrolled. And I sat there staring at the rim of her glass, trying to keep my hands from shaking. When I finally spoke, I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I said, "Rena, I need to talk to you about last night." She didn't even look up. "If this is about the credit card again, I already told you." "It's not," I said. My mouth felt dry. My hands were numb. "It's about you not coming home. About how you turned your phone off. About how you came back this morning with a bruise on your collarbone." That got her attention. She stared at me. Cold. Wide-eyed, but not in fear. It was disgust. Thinly veiled contempt, like I was beneath even defending herself too. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "You're tracking me now?" "No," I said. "I'm noticing." And that's when she leaned in, her voice syrupy with venom. "I don't need you making decisions for me, Milo. I'm not your property." It was so casual. So clean. Like she'd rehearsed it a dozen times. And I didn't argue. I just got up, walked to the bathroom, locked the door. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I didn't want her to see me fall apart. Behind that door, I stared at myself in the mirror and felt like I was looking at a version of me that died months ago, one who didn't know his wife had already replaced him emotionally, possibly physically, with someone who made her hum when she walked through the door. I sat on the floor, against the bathtub. I stayed there long after the light turned itself off. That was 3 days ago. She's still here, still playing the part, sometimes even better than before. But it's like she's acting for someone else, not me. There's a new password on her phone. A new softness in her voice when she's texting someone after midnight, facing the wall. I haven't asked again. Because the truth? I think she wants me to. I think she wants a fight. A reason to walk out. But I'm not going to give her that. Not yet. First, I need to know how deep this goes. Because if I'm right, if what I suspect is true, then the betrayal is far worse than just infidelity. It's everything. It wasn't until Thursday night that I finally broke the rule I had promised myself I wouldn't break. I opened her laptop. Before you judge me, please understand, I wasn't trying to spy, and I wasn't trying to catch her in some dramatic act of betrayal. I didn't want confirmation. I wanted peace. I wanted clarity. I wanted to prove to myself that I was just paranoid, that my suspicions were the result of an overactive mind crushed under months of emotional starvation. She'd gone to bed early, claimed she had a migraine and needed quiet. She left her laptop charging on the kitchen island, lid closed but still humming, still warm. And I just stood there, staring at it like it might breathe if I got too close. I know Rena's passwords. We've been married over a decade, long enough that digital privacy wasn't even a topic between us. But it still felt like theft, prying into a part of her that she clearly no longer shared with me. My hand hovered over the keyboard longer than I care to admit. I should have walked away. Instead, I opened the lid. The screen lit up without a password prompt. A Chrome window was already open. There were 4 tabs. 2 were innocuous, recipes, an email draft for work. The third was a shopping cart full of overpriced boots she'd never wear around me. But the fourth? The fourth was the one that made me stop breathing. A Reddit thread. Private messages. Username, @RedRightNight. I scrolled. Her account. Her words. Hundreds of messages between her and someone named Rowan_Grayline. Some public. Some direct. All of them stomach-churning in their intimacy. And no, it wasn't overly explicit. There weren't graphic exchanges or images. But the emotional depth? That was worse. She told him things she hadn't said to me in years. That she felt seen for the first time in forever. That she missed the way he talked to her like she mattered. That she was with someone who used to feel like home but now feels like a landlord. That line cut me open. She didn't say my name. But she didn't have to. There were posts about her partner who doesn't listen, A man who makes every decision like she's furniture in the background. I read dozens of comments from strangers validating her, uplifting her, encouraging her to leave if she needs to rediscover herself. And Rowan? He was everything I wasn't. Poetic, adventurous, unattached. He quoted books she loved, asked about her dreams, sent voice notes with soft music in the background. The worst part? One of the messages was timestamped during our anniversary dinner 2 weeks ago, the dinner I planned after she forgot the date until I reminded her that morning. I felt like someone had folded my ribs inward. I closed the laptop slowly, careful not to disturb a single key, like touching it too long might burn me. I didn't sleep that night. Again. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek while sipping her coffee and asked if I wanted to join her for a spontaneous weekend upstate. Her eyes sparkled like they used to, but it wasn't real. It was rehearsed, measured. A peace offering from a war I didn't know I was losing until I was already wounded. I nodded, not because I wanted to go, but because I needed more time. To watch. To understand what kind of person I'd really been living with all these years. If she was capable of crafting an entirely separate life on a public forum under my nose, what else was she capable of? That weekend, that trip, was the breaking point. I didn't know it then, but it would be the final act in a play where I was nothing but a prop. The cabin was supposed to be quiet. That was the entire reason for the trip, or at least the reason she gave me. "You've been stressed lately," she said with that soft, calculated tone that felt more like a schoolteacher calming a tantrum than a wife comforting a husband. "Let's unplug for a couple days, breathe some fresh air, and remember how to be human again." It sounded like an olive branch, and I was so hungry for even the idea of peace that I took it without question. The drive upstate was oddly silent. Rena played some ambient playlist she claimed she found on a healing blog, and I just watched trees flick past the window like ghosts. Every so often she'd hum, not a real song, just a rhythm, like she was trying to convince herself she was content. But there was something in her posture that betrayed her. She wasn't relaxed. She wasn't with me. Her shoulders were too tight, her phone face down the entire trip but buzzed in her lap twice before we even hit the highway. We pulled up to the cabin around 7 p.m., a place that looked like it was stolen straight out of a stock photo. Lanterns on the porch, firewood stacked with surgical precision, a stone chimney puffing out the last breath of a fading ember. She had rented it through someone she found on a referral-only retreat app. I should have questioned that more. Inside, it was rustic but modern. Exposed beams, clawfoot tub, one big open concept room with a fireplace that only worked when it wanted to. There was no TV, no service, and supposedly, that was the point. The first night was uneventful. We drank mulled wine from a box, ate overpriced snacks from a wooden crate labeled Nourishment, and played a board game we hadn't touched since 2015. She laughed at one point, a real laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. The second day, things shifted. I woke up early and noticed her side of the bed was cold. Her hiking boots were gone. There was a thermos missing from the counter. I sat up, waiting for that familiar surge of panic to rise in my throat, but I choked it down and made coffee instead. She returned an hour later, breathless and flushed, claiming she had gone for a meditative walk down by the creek. No photos. No trail app logged. Just a vague story about journaling on a rock and listening to the universe. I let it go. That night, around 10:30 p.m., she excused herself to take a bath. Said she needed to soak the city out of her bones. I stayed by the fire, flipping through a decades-old National Geographic someone had left behind, pretending I wasn't listening for any unusual sounds. The bathwater ran. The pipes groaned. But then I heard something that froze me mid-page. A man's voice. Muffled. Just 1 or 2 words. But not my voice. And not hers either. I stood up so fast my foot hit the coffee table. The magazine slid to the floor. I tiptoed toward the bathroom door and knocked once, lightly. "Rena," I said, my voice barely audible. Silence. Then the sound of a shampoo bottle clattering to the tile. I knocked again, harder this time. "Is everything okay?" I heard movement. Then her voice, too cheerful, too fast, just dropped something. "All good." But she didn't open the door. She didn't even come out for another 25 minutes. When she finally did, she wore one of those hotel robes that never really fits anyone and smelled like citrus and lavender. Her hair was up in a towel. She smiled like nothing had happened. "You're staring," she said playfully, drying her ear with a Q-tip. I wanted to ask. God, I wanted to ask. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the part of me that feared the answer more than the suspicion. Maybe it was shame, or cowardice, or the dying ember of hope still whispering, "Don't wreck this until you know for sure." That night, I barely slept. I stared at the bathroom door for hours, heart racing at every creak of wood or distant owl outside. I kept trying to tell myself I imagined it, that the voice was something on the wind, or an echo from the pipes. But I knew better. Deep down, I knew. She left the next morning before I woke up. Said she had a virtual wellness interview and needed to get back to the city early. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't even make eye contact. She just left me there, alone in that cabin with a fire that wouldn't stay lit and silence that felt like it was taunting me. I drove home in a fog, with no music, no direction, and a question I couldn't shake. Who was in the bathroom with my wife, and why did she think I wouldn't notice? 2 days after the cabin, Rena left her phone in the laundry basket. That might not sound like a big deal, but when someone guards their phone like it's made of state secrets, the tiniest slip becomes a crack in the armor. She usually kept it on her at all times, tucked into her back pocket, under her pillow, or on silent next to her yoga mat during stretching hours, whatever that meant lately. But that afternoon, while she was out getting groceries, her phone was right there between a damp sweater and an unmatched sock. Like the universe had gotten tired of watching me unravel slowly and finally threw me a rope. It was on Do Not Disturb. No surprise. I picked it up, telling myself again that I wouldn't open anything. I wouldn't search. Just look. Just notice. The lock screen was a photo of a foggy mountain range. Not us. Not even her. Just a mood. Like her background had become as distant and untouchable as she had. But I saw the notification before it faded, a gray box that flashed briefly at the top of the screen. Rowan_Grayline sent a voice memo. "You'll like this one. It's pretty raw." The blood drained from my face. I don't know what part of me took over then. Some desperate, wheezing instinct to finally pull the curtain back. I opened her phone. Yes, the password was the same, and navigated to the Reddit app like my fingers already knew the steps. There it was. A message thread with her lover. Yes, I can call him that now. There's no more denial to shield me from the word. The messages were casual, familiar, like two people who had long passed the point of flirtation and now existed in a shared pocket of the world where I didn't matter and never had. I hit play on the voice memo. For the first few seconds, I couldn't even comprehend what I was hearing. There was breathing, slow and shallow. Then his voice, low and close to the mic. "She told me this morning that she dreamed of my hands again," he whispered. "She said she woke up aching. I can still feel her on my mouth." I dropped the phone. It bounced off the laundry basket and hit the tile, the screen still glowing, the voice still speaking. I scrambled to pause it like I was trying to silence a bomb before it reached the end of its timer. The air in the room felt thick, like I was drowning in it. I sat down on the floor, phone in my lap, and just stared at the wall for a long time. That voice memo had shattered every excuse I had left. I had told myself that maybe it was emotional. Maybe it was just her looking for attention or validation. Maybe they hadn't crossed the physical line yet. No, they had. Repeatedly. And worse, she spoke about me to him. Just earlier in the thread, there was a message that read, "He's like a houseplant now. Always in the corner. Easy to ignore. I water him sometimes so he doesn't die." I read it 3 times. 4. A houseplant. That's what I was to her. Not a person. Not a partner. Not a man who helped pay for her grad school, who waited 3 years to have kids because she wasn't ready, who massaged her back through anxiety attacks and told her she didn't have to apologize for needing space. No, I was background furniture. Something to be tolerated. When she came back from the store, I had already cleaned up the kitchen, folded the laundry, and placed her phone, still locked, neatly on her nightstand. I didn't say a word about it. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't even look her in the eyes when she kissed the top of my head and said, "Thanks, babe." Because in that moment, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a spy in my own life. A witness to the quiet murder of a marriage. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because what came next wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be a decision. And I needed time to make sure I could live with what I was about to do. There are moments when your brain wants to believe one thing, even as your eyes are screaming something else. Moments where reality cracks open just wide enough for the truth to leak through. And for a second, you're just standing there, watching it pour out in slow motion, too stunned to move. That happened to me on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, in our shared kitchen, with a chipped mug in my hand and my wife's laptop glowing across the counter. It was supposed to be a normal day. That's the sickest part. I had called in sick from work, not because I was ill, but because I couldn't keep pretending like I could focus on spreadsheets when all I could think about was her. Her voice. Her lies. That voicemail I kept replaying in my mind until I could practically recite his breath. Rena said she had a virtual mindfulness session that afternoon with her healing cohort, a therapy group she'd joined through some online coaching network I'd never fully understood. Normally, she did those sessions in the bedroom, door closed, incense lit. But that day, she set up in the kitchen for a change. Said she wanted the natural light from the window. Said I could stay if I wanted, just put on headphones. She didn't know I'd already heard more than I was supposed to. I nodded and poured myself coffee, pretending I was fine, pretending her presence didn't make my skin buzz like static. She sat across the island, opened her laptop, adjusted the camera, then clicked into the Zoom meeting. I stayed on the couch a few feet away, half hidden behind the armrest, pretending to scroll my phone while I actually watched the reflection on her screen. I couldn't hear much, just snippets, but I could see the video tiles lighting up one by one. Then I saw him. It wasn't labeled Rowan_Grayline, of course. It was a real name. His name. Elijah Brandt. I froze. He was younger than I imagined. Mid-30s, maybe. Sharp jaw, round glasses, slight stubble, calm posture like someone who spent his entire adult life meditating in rooms with exposed brick and rain soundtracks in the background. But it was the look he gave her, the look he didn't give anyone else on that call, that made my stomach drop. His eyes lit up when she joined. His smile broke just slightly wider than it did for the others. And Rena? She tilted her head in that soft, practiced way, the one I hadn't seen in years. Like her face just became more beautiful in the presence of someone who mattered. She greeted the group. Hi everyone. Good to see you again. Calm. Warm. But when she said, Hi, Elijah, it was different. She bit her lip after. Brief, but noticeable. And he winked. A full, deliberate wink. In a group therapy session. That's when I knew for certain, this man wasn't just a fling. He wasn't some stranger she met online. He was embedded in her life. Her rituals. Her wellness. He had been introduced into the very fabric of our daily routine, disguised as healing. I watched for 20 more minutes as they discussed breath work, vulnerability, inner child work, all the things she used to mock when we were dating, back when we laughed about people who paid strangers on the internet to teach them how to cry. But here she was, telling a group of pixelated faces about how she was processing the weight of partnership and reclaiming independence from patterns that no longer serve her. Patterns. That was me, I guess. I was a pattern. After the call, she shut the laptop, stretched, and looked at me like I hadn't been sitting there the entire time. I feel so clear now, she said, pouring herself oat milk over granola like her soul had been cleansed. Like I'm finally taking the right steps. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the mug against the wall and ask her what the hell Elijah meant to her, why she brought him into our life like he was her emotional savior while she kept treating me like a ghost wearing a wedding ring. But I said nothing. Instead, I excused myself, walked into the garage, and sat in the car for almost an hour with the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from flying apart. Because here's the truth. I'm not strong. I'm not decisive. I'm not the guy who delivers a perfectly timed ultimatum and walks away with dignity. I'm just a man sitting in a car, wondering how long he's been irrelevant in his own marriage. And for the first time since this all began, I realized something far more terrifying than betrayal. I realized that she doesn't love me anymore. But worse than that, I think she hasn't for a long time. It's strange how the most devastating truths never come crashing through your door. They slip in like a draft under it. Quiet, cold, and persistent. I wasn't looking for more evidence. I wasn't chasing it anymore. I was done trying to decode her sighs, her smiles, her subtle distance. I had already seen his face, heard his voice, read her words. That should have been enough. But the truth wasn't finished with me yet. It came from someone I least expected, Mara. Mara was Rena's oldest friend, college roommates turned lifelong sisters in arms. The kind of friendship that survived bad haircuts, worse boyfriends, and the endless cycle of "I'm fine" texts that actually meant the opposite. Mara had always been kind to me in a distant, obligatory way. Friendly at dinners, polite on birthdays, but never overly involved. She was loyal to Rena, not us. So when I saw Mara's name light up on my phone that Friday afternoon, I almost didn't answer. I was in the garage again, avoiding the quiet of the house. But something told me to pick up. "Milo," she asked. Her voice was tense. Not dramatic. Not casual. Just pressed. "Yeah." There was a long pause. A breath. Is Rena home? No. She's at another retreat this weekend, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, flat, gray, robotic. Why? Mara hesitated. Then she said it. I shouldn't be calling you. I know that. But I can't sit on this anymore. I didn't think it was my business, but now it feels like a secret I'm being forced to carry, and I didn't sign up for that. What are you talking about? She took another breath. It's not just Elijah, she said. The garage seemed to shrink around me. What do you mean it's not just Elijah? There was someone before him, Mara continued. And one after him. I think maybe more. But those are the ones I know about. She told me. Not all at once. It came out in pieces. Wine nights, late calls, moments where she was feeling bold, I guess. Or guilty. I don't know. I said nothing. My fingers had gone numb around the phone. She met the first guy at a networking conference in Philly. This was like 2 years ago. He was some tech consultant, younger, cocky. She said it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. They met again. Then after him was some guy from her cycling class. And now this Elijah guy? He's just the one who stuck around longer. I still said nothing. My pulse was a dull throb in my temples. Milo, I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Mara added quickly. I kept thinking she'd stop, that she'd come clean, that maybe it was just a phase. But you don't deserve this. You've never deserved this. It's strange how pain and clarity can feel the same when they hit you hard enough. In that moment, I saw the entire last few years of my life in perfect, brutal detail. The canceled trips, the mood swings, the sudden fitness obsessions, the coldness disguised as stress, the quiet contempt she carried for me in her eyes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I had become a stranger in my own life. A husband in name only. A default setting. I didn't cry on the phone. I thanked Mara, hung up, and sat there for what felt like an hour. The garage smelled like dust and motor oil and stale regret. I stared at the wall, waiting for something to break inside me, but all I felt was silence. And then the silence turned into resolve. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. She had taken so much from me already, my trust, my dignity, my peace. But I still had one thing left. One thing she hadn't noticed because she stopped looking at me long ago. I had the power to end it on my terms. And I would. But not with yelling. Not with drama. I was going to walk out of the story she thought she was controlling, and I would do it in a way she'd never see coming. I started planning that night. I decided to make her favorite meal. That probably sounds insane, I know. After everything she'd done, after the emotional affair, the physical betrayal, the mockery in private messages, and the truth spilled by her own friend, I decided to put on an apron and cook for her like we were still the version of ourselves from 8 years ago. The version where she laughed at my bad jokes while sipping wine barefoot in the kitchen, where she called me her safe place and said she felt like home when I was near. But it wasn't a tribute. It wasn't nostalgia. It was the eulogy. I started early, made the grocery list exact, down to the brand of pesto she liked from the boutique market across town. I picked up fresh salmon, heirloom tomatoes, and a bottle of the cheap Pinot she always said tasted better than the expensive stuff. I even found the old playlist we used to put on during dinner dates at home. Soft jazz, acoustic covers, that one goofy French pop song we danced to once in the hallway and never admitted felt romantic. I cleaned the entire house before she got home. Not for her, for me. So when I left, it wouldn't be in chaos. It wouldn't look like someone stormed out of a burning wreck. It would look like a man who had quietly packed up the pieces of his life and stepped into a new chapter without slamming a single door. She walked in around 7:30. Her keys hit the bowl, as always. She called out, "Milo," with a confused lilt when she smelled garlic in the air. I didn't respond immediately. I was lighting the last candle on the table. When she walked into the dining room and saw it, real plates, real silverware, cloth napkins, wine breathing in the decanter, her expression twisted into something unfamiliar. Not guilt. Not gratitude. It was wariness. She blinked slowly, like she was trying to figure out the catch. "You cooked?" she asked, voice light. I nodded. "Salmon with lemon herb crust. Just like you like it." She paused, then gave a tight smile. "What's the occasion?" I shrugged. "I just wanted us to have one good dinner. No phones. No rushing." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing else. We sat. We ate. She complimented the food, but not me. She drank half a glass of wine and picked at her plate, like her appetite couldn't keep up with her suspicion. I asked her about work. She gave short answers. I asked her if her retreat helped. She mumbled something about centering. I didn't press. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about me reclaiming my ending. Once the plates were cleared, I stood and reached for the envelope on the counter. I had written her name on the front in block letters, sealed with a paperclip, not tape, not glue, just something temporary, like everything between us had always been. She watched me warily as I placed it beside her wine glass. "What's this?" she asked. My last word. Her face fell. Slowly. No dramatic gasp. Just a twitch of the mouth. A flicker of the eyes. Her fingers brushed the envelope like it might bite. She didn't open it right away. I didn't wait for her to. "I'll be staying at the Candlebrook for a while," I said calmly. "You'll notice the bank statements and passwords are all updated in the folder inside. My lawyer's information is included as well. I'm not going to drag this out. You don't need to explain anything. You already did. Just not with words." She blinked, as if she didn't understand. "You're leaving." "I already did," I said. "I've just been waiting for you to notice." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her hand trembled slightly against the envelope. And for the first time in a very long time, I saw something in her face that I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not anger. Not outrage. Not even sadness. Just the sharp realization that she wasn't in control anymore. "I won't be here tomorrow," I said, grabbing my overnight bag from behind the couch. "The rest of my things I'll move out next week. You can keep the apartment. I'll sign whatever I need to." Still, no words from her. I walked to the door. I paused only once, to look at the dining table bathed in soft candlelight, 2 plates empty, 1 wine glass full, 1 untouched letter beside it. I didn't say goodbye, because this wasn't goodbye. This was release. And when the door clicked behind me, it was the first time in years that I felt the air in my lungs belonged to me again. The text came at 1:42 a.m. I saw it light up on the nightstand of my hotel room, just beneath the humming air conditioner and the ticking silence that comes after the hardest part is already over. It simply said, "Can we talk?" No explanation. No apology. Not even punctuation after the question mark. Just a line thrown into the darkness like a fishhook hoping to catch what had already swum too far away. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I lay there under the scratchy hotel blanket, listening to the faint sound of tires in the distance, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not her footsteps. Not her approval. Not the next betrayal. I was just still. I thought about the man I had been, how much of myself I had chipped away over the years to keep the peace, to make things easier, to stay the good guy. I thought about every silent dinner, every gaslight conversation, every night spent in the same bed with someone who had emotionally left years before I ever noticed. And then I looked at the message again. "Can we talk?" And finally, I typed. "There's nothing left to say, Rena. I'm okay now. I hope someday you will be too." And I hit send. I turned off the phone after that, not out of spite, but closure. Because healing doesn't always come with big speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision to stop bleeding for someone who never even noticed you were cut. The following morning, I woke up early and walked down to the little diner near the hotel. The waitress smiled like she meant it, handed me coffee, and called me hon. I sat by the window and watched the sun rise through the fog. And you know what? It didn't hurt. Not the way I thought it would. I felt light. Not happy, not yet, but hopeful. And that was more than I'd felt in years. Since then, I've signed the papers, moved into a smaller place across town, started attending a support group, not the spiritual kind Rena liked, but the kind where people speak plainly, cry sometimes, and laugh a lot more than I expected. I even took up hiking again. Nothing long, just a few trails on weekends. The fresh air doesn't fix everything, but it helps remind me that the world's bigger than one broken relationship. Sometimes I think about her, not with anger, not with longing, just recognition, like someone you once knew well, but wouldn't recognize across a crowded room today. And that's okay, because healing doesn't always look like new love or dramatic reinvention. Sometimes it's just remembering how to breathe in your own rhythm again, to sit in a quiet room and not feel the need to fill it. I'm not perfect. I'm not whole yet, but I'm not broken anymore, either. And that's enough.